Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Anoki Uncensored, airing for free on the world's #1 South Asian radio station, Ruckus Avenue Radio on the iHeartRadio app. Just download the app and search Ruckus Avenue Radio. Episodes air every Tuesday at 7 p.m. PST and 10 p.m. EST. You can also watch the episodes on the Girn YouTube channel and the Anoki Media Facebook page. So hop on over to both and join now. I'm your host, Girn, coming to you today with a special episode about Diwali, the Festival of Lights. As we get closer to this, one of the most celebrated festivals by Hindus and Sikhs around the world, I'm thrilled to invite CHHAVI Arya Bhargava to the show to talk about her new children's book called A Kid's Book About Diwali. Available everywhere books are sold, but I encourage you to purchase your copy at the website bookaboutdiwali.com because that's where you'll get the best deal, along with some cool downloadable freebies for your kids to enjoy. CHHAVI, welcome to the show, sweetheart. We've got tons to talk about, and it's about time I bring you on, my love.
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is so wonderful to have this conversation with you like this.
Absolutely. Well, before we begin and talk about the book, I want to kind of set some context for everyone watching, listening, and reading this about why culture is important. We talk about this so much in our community, and a lot of communities are also talking about it a lot. And especially now it's being amplified on social media and many other platforms like this one. I really feel that I'd like to start there because we all have different perspectives on what that actually means. Through your own experiences growing up in Canada, many people may not know that, where the only place Diwali was celebrated at that time when you and I were growing up was in our homes. We weren't talking about it in schools. We weren't talking about it in our communities. Can you share what that experience was like for you? Because I feel that's a great starting point for this conversation.
Yeah, I grew up in Canada. I've been in Canada for almost 30 years. I came from India. I was 6 years old, and then I moved to Canada. Um, and growing up in Canada, there weren't a lot of South Asians in my neighborhood, right? There was not that many South Asians in the school that I was at. I was probably the only person that looked like me. So that was a very isolating experience. And so we just celebrated, with at the mandir or the temple or with our family. And culture was just either something that you celebrated with your family. It was never celebrated outside of your home.
Mm-hmm. And that really is, a story that our entire generation can talk about outside of India. I mean, I grew up in England, people that grew up in Canada, people that grew up anywhere in Europe, Australia. We hear all these stories across the states. We
Yeah.
all have the same, scenario there, and what that made us feel like. Can you share a little bit about how that felt for you, because it was very much that we were living a dual existence, a dual identity, one in our homes and one outside of our homes. Share what that was like for you, sweetheart.
Uh, it was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. I felt like I couldn't I had to be two different people,
Mm-hmm.
right? I couldn't wear my Indian clothes. I couldn't bring I mean, my mom used to make me chutney sandwiches. And I'm sure, I mean, I've heard this story with so many other people too. You can't bring that. What is that green stuff? What is that that smells? Why are you bringing
Mm-hmm.
that here? And so you had to assimilate. You had to be more white,
Yes. Oh
right?
my gosh. Oh my gosh, I love that you said that, because a lot of people, don't say it the way it is. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, that really was what it was, because we grew up in a very monochromatic society. Either you were, like white, or you were everything else. And it's the everything else category that has taken us up until now to really be able to identify what that was. I want to kind of jump a little bit to later on when you became a teacher and started to advocate for the promotion of cultural diversity by teaching Diwali and other cultural
Yeah.
traditions to your students. Why was this important at that time? Why is this important even now as a teacher as a mother and even as an active participant in our communities?
Yeah. So one of my favorite memories, I'll never forget. My principal asked me, what do you want to do as an extracurricular activity? And I didn't really see something that identified with me. And then when I started teaching, I noticed there were a lot of diverse students. It was
Mm-hmm.
very diverse. There weren't a lot of South Asian students, but they weren't able to talk about their own cultural background. There were a lot of Muslims there. They celebrated Eid.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have hot dog day, and the PTA couldn't understand why the school wasn't raising any money. And I was like, listen, a lot of people don't eat pork. And that
Mm.
was so surprising to them. And so it really inspired me at that time to create a club. So I called it the Multicultural Club. That was the very first one that started in Windsor, Ontario. And that was a place where students could come together. They could learn about different traditions from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So then I asked them, what do we want to do? And they're like, oh, we want to do a Christmas, assembly. And I said, well, what about Kwanzaa? What about Hanukkah? What about Chinese Lunar New Year? What about Diwali? And they're like, well, we can't do that in one holiday. I was like, one ceremony. I'm like, why not? Like, let's figure out what all these celebrations have in common.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these celebrations, they celebrate light, they celebrate family, they celebrate the triumph of good over evil. And so they were really excited. So we did a Diwali celebration. I took all of my childhood langas since I was very little. So we had kids that were like 6 years old all the way to like 12 years old participating. And they had never seen Indian clothes before.
Wow.
But they embraced it. And then I think like the magic happened for me, right? Here they are. They're learning Garba. Now imagine these students, they've got dandiya sticks and they're dancing to the beat of dhol baje. And then they stayed after school for hours and hours because they were just curious. They wanted to learn something
Mm-hmm.
different from their own
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you are sharing that, Chavi, because, we're often taught that, always kind of, like attracts like, and, what does that look like? And, we think that it's the outward, differences that, is the problem, but it really isn't. The problem is how we perceive the commonalities, and do we perceive them? And that's really what you're sharing here. And I think that's the big thing, the big takeaway for everyone that's watching, listening, and reading this. The differences is what makes, our cultures and our interconnection between each other so interesting and exciting. It's the commonalities that threads us together as community. And I
Mhm.
think that's the big thing that I'm taking away from what you're sharing here. And I want to maybe expand on that a little bit before we move into the book. Why do you feel people of all cultures should share their traditions with each other and not keep it insular in their homes and communities? I mean, in other words, like, why does it matter to create understanding on a larger scale? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Two words: belonging and inclusivity,
Hmm.
right? When your culture is celebrated by other people, you feel like you belong, right? It's a huge feeling. It's feeling accepted. Christmas. I celebrate Christmas. I
Yeah.
have a tree in my house.
Yeah.
I'm not Christian, right? But I have lights outside. If you go to any other country that celebrates Diwali at a massive scale, like Singapore, my husband was just in Singapore. He sent me all these pictures of everyone celebrating Diwali,
Wow.
everyone. So just
Hmm.
imagine how Christmas is like here in the United States or in Canada. You celebrate it and everyone embraces it. Why
Hmm.
not celebrate Diwali? Why not celebrate everyone's culture? When
Right.
we celebrate, we invite people that don't celebrate to join us. I
Hmm.
go to Christmas Mass every 24th. I love it. It's
Wow.
beautiful,
Right.
right? It's just, I'm around, it's the energy and the
Yeah.
feeling that you have when you go somewhere where something is celebrated. And it's the message. When I was growing up,
Hmm.
I don't tell this to many people, but when I was growing up, my mom used to have a temple and she had Ganesh, she had Jesus Christ, she would pray to Allah, she had pretty much every religion you could think of. And I remember going to the temple every week. And I said, Mom, all of my friends go to church. And why don't I go to church? She was,
Mm-hmm.
Beta, go to church. Go to church right now. And I said, Really? She's like, Yeah, let's go. Go to Sunday school. I went to
Mm-hmm.
Sunday school for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then she took me out and she said, Okay, now I'm going to take you to the Gurdwara. Now I'm going to take you to the mosque. Now I'm going to take you to all these other places. So I went. And then she asked me this one question. She said, What did you learn?
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, these are the things that I'm learning. These are the things that they expect, how to be good, how to be great, like your morals, your values. And she said, every religion is teaching you the same thing. Every
Mm-hmm.
culture is teaching you the same thing. What you have to decide is what's meaningful to you and go on that path. Whether you celebrate as a Hindu, as a Sikh, as a Muslim, it doesn't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just choose one and learn from everything. And I think that's the day that I started being open minded and just learning about other things and wanting and curious to learn about other people and other traditions.
Mm-hmm. Your mom was such a rock star. I mean, we're going back now, to her generation and, what that, footprint looked like in those days, right? And the
Yeah.
fact that she had such a, forward thinking perspective on life and, why we're here as humans, in this realm, in this universe, and, instilling that in you without fearing that you could lose sight of your identity, but actually enhancing it, giving you the opportunity and the choice. I kind of feel that I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I kind of feel that maybe that was why teaching spoke to you, that helping people and children especially understand that they do have a choice to what their identity needs to mean to them and what that needs to look like for them. I want to kind of touch base a little bit on that, Chavi. What do you think schools and parents can do beyond just acknowledging the holiday or their holidays to actively foster cultural awareness and inclusivity, particularly for those who may not be familiar with other people's festivals, similar to what you have done? Like how can
Yeah.
that transplant over onto a larger scale? How can we make that more something that all schools could potentially think about
Yeah.
doing? I feel that you've done that really well through your experiences. How could that be done everywhere,
Yeah.
especially now when we're being taught so many things to confuse children, you know?
Yeah. Well, a lot of schools, as you may know, in New York City, Fairfax, where I'm from, they have Diwali off as a holiday, right? And that's
Yes.
great. It's wonderful. There's a lot more states that are now celebrating it, and it's recognized. That's wonderful. Um, but it's just a first step, right? It's really just the beginning of what we can do to create an inclusive environment.
Mm-hmm.
One of the key things that I like to emphasize, and it shouldn't be like cultural awareness. A lot of people have like multicultural day. Well, why is it once a year? Why is
Right.
it this token celebration? Right? It has to be woven into everything. Right. When I created classroom activities, I got lesson plans. Okay, this is what you need to teach for math and spelling and whatever. And then I looked at my classroom and I looked at the kids in there and I said, none of their names are in any of these worksheets. How are
Mm-hmm.
they going to identify with this? So I
Mm-hmm.
took their names. I literally did the entire worksheets by myself. I rewrote them. And back in the day, you had to do that all by yourself and photocopy everything. There's no chat GPT, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so we had to do, I put their names in every test, in every worksheet, because I wanted them to see themselves in everything. There were no books at that time that had a lot of, things that represented them.
Mm-hmm.
So that was important to me. And instead of the volley being mentioned in passing, right? Why not just incorporate it into your books and your lesson plans and subjects? For example, in your math class, you can have like Rohan decorated the house with 12 strings of lights, each with 10 lights. I mean, you can do math problems and you can talk about the volley in the math problem, right? And it has to be extended outside of the home too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and I also did that. I realized teachers don't have time to do this by themselves. So how do you do that? There's a lot of resources out there now. People are making them, including one on my website. I have worksheets that you can just download for every grade level. So you teach about Diwali and you can just take those worksheets and use them in your classroom.
I love it. You know, I would have loved to have had you as a teacher when I was growing up, and all the confusion of, you know, what should I be believing in, you know, because it was very different in the home
Yeah.
to what it was, you know, out there in the school system. Because as you're rightfully sharing, the school system was based off of, you know, the Christian faith. And we weren't taught how to connect those dots between our culture and the Christian faith, but there are more similarities between all religions than there are differences, as you've already, you know, noted there. And those were the kinds of things that created a lot of confusion for us as we were growing up. I'm so happy that, you know, teachers like you know, exist and have existed for this generation to make those changes happen, to speak up and share the commonalities. And this is really, you know, just one of the ways you're doing this is through this book.
Yeah.
And before we get into it, guys, if you're just joining us, I am speaking to the fabulous Chavi. She is a woman to admire. You know, I want you to go back and listen to this from the beginning, because she shares a little bit about her journey and, you know, the way that she was brought up and how that, you know, impacted the way she decided to, you know, teach and celebrate the culture and to teach the next generation. She has written this incredible book called A Kid's Book About Diwali. It's available at many, you know, bookstores, wherever books are sold, but specifically at bookaboutdiwali.com is the one that I want to bring up, because this is where we're going to talk a little bit about some other things that are available there as well. But before we do that, Chevy, for those people who have tuned in that aren't from, you know, our culture, aren't familiar with Diwali, can we share a little bit about what Diwali actually is? And then let's dive into the book.
Yeah. Diwali is simply the festival of lights. It's a celebration of light overcoming darkness, of good triumphing over evil. It's a major holiday for Hindus, Jains, Sikhs, and Buddhists. We mark it by lighting diyas. Diyas are little candles or oil lamps. We share sweets. We come together as a family. It's a time for renewal, for gratitude. It's a time to reflect on the values of kindness and community. And while it is rooted in religious traditions, the universal theme that everyone can celebrate is you know, light over darkness. It makes it a holiday that anyone can appreciate and celebrate.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this incredible book. I want to ask you the obvious question first.
Yeah.
Why write it, and why as a children's book?
Well, I'm a teacher, and I was just very frustrated. I think for the very longest time, I couldn't find resources that were available that I could bring into the classroom. Um, it, this book isn't just about Diwali to me, right?
Mhm.
It's really about sharing who I am, my identity. And it stems from a very long time ago when I was a teacher. There just weren't resources available, right? I looked, I tried to find it, couldn't find it. Then I became a mom. Yes, there were more resources available. But again, I was trying to find that book that I could bring into the classrooms, right? There were books, there's fiction books, there's a lot more great stories out there. But as a teacher, I needed things to be able to explain to every child, whether they celebrate or they don't celebrate, what is Diwali? How can you identify with this holiday? How is it
Mhm.
similar to things that you already celebrate or things that you already know about? There was a child, I was at a play date, and I was giving him this copy of this book. And he goes, well, can I celebrate Diwali? And I said, of course you can celebrate. He goes, well, how do I explain it to someone? Right.
Mhm.
And I said, well, do you celebrate Christmas? It's like, yeah. I go, do you know anyone that celebrates Hanukkah? He goes, yeah. I go, do you celebrate the 4th of July and Independence Day? He says, yeah. I go, what about New Year? He's like, yeah. I'm like, well, Diwali has a lot of those things, all those things that you do in all of these celebrations. New Year's, you celebrate a new year, a new beginning. Even Thanksgiving, it's about gratitude. Do you celebrate Independence Day? We have fireworks. Christmas, we have gifts. It's a celebration of lights. And he was like, oh, I can't wait to celebrate. This is such a cool holiday. And no matter, like, that's the reason why we need one day off. One day is not enough for us, right? We need a day off to celebrate all these wonderful things.
Absolutely. I also want to a question that I want to ask you because I'm curious. You collaborated with a Kids Code DK Penguin Random House for
Yeah.
this book. I want to ask you, for someone who has their own publishing house with your husband, of course, Rohit, why go that route?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, our publishing house, we focus on nonfiction books and business books. And if you're in the publishing world or an author, you know that the worlds are different, children's books and kids' nonfiction books. And we don't specialize in children's books. I could have written this book on my own. I could
Yeah.
have done self publishing, but I really wanted to get it into every classroom. I
Mhm.
wanted a brand that was recognized already, right? I wanted to partner with someone. So, libraries, schools, they've already seen a kids' book about series. The Kids
Mhm.
Book About series is a series that talks about difficult conversations, right? There's a kids' book about school shootings, a kids' book about cancer, a kids' book about advertising, marketing. These are all
Wow.
topics that are sometimes hard to talk about, even voting, which you should get
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
But all of these topics are really important. They didn't have one about any holiday. And so when I approached them, I said, how about we do one about the volley? And they loved it. We're like,
Mhm.
this is great. This will be our very first Diwali, very first holiday book. So that was really
Wow.
important. There's books that are written by Jessica Biel, by LeVar Burton. So it's gotten a lot of recognition. And I think if you partner with somebody that has that recognition, this book will get into more hands and it will just become this go to resource for all children, all educators, all parents to see and use.
Oh my gosh, I love everything about what you're sharing here for everyone. Can we actually, there's something I'm curious about. The book is so beautifully designed, but there aren't any illustrations. Was that on purpose? Can you share that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That was a big worry for me, to be honest, when I partnered with a kids co.
Mhm.
But I am so familiar with their books, and most of their books don't have a lot of illustrations, right?
Mhm.
They want you to focus on the big font, the big words, right? This book is meant to be read with an adult, right? It's meant to have those conversations. You don't have to read the entire book in one sitting. I mean, 5 year
Mhm.
olds maybe may not have a long enough attention span, right?
Mhm.
So you have to have those conversations. How does this make you feel? Do you celebrate like this? How do you do this? Let's do an activity that shows this, right?
Mhm.
A lot of these books, if you have pictures, it puts a certain mental image in their heads.
Mhm.
And Diwali is celebrated so differently across religions, across even in India, wherever
Mhm.
you're from, north, south, east, west, it's celebrated so differently. How do I take a huge, massive celebration like Diwali and condense it and simplify it, right? Incorporating things that teachers would be able to use, but also things that children would be able to understand
Mhm.
without losing that tradition, that significance, the real meaning behind the volley, right? I didn't want to put images in someone's head, right? To make it could be biased to be like, oh, I don't celebrate like this, right?
Mhm.
Sikhs celebrate Bandi Chhor Divas, right? They don't,
Mhm.
they understand the whole story behind the Ramayana. Most Hindus don't understand Bandi Chhor Divas, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you have to really be able to listen to the words, understand what it means, talk about it with a grown up, and then explore your own options and your own visuals.
It's really interesting, that you state that you encourage the book to be read by a parent or an adult with children. Um, that was never the case when we were growing up, right? And when we used to have our books, right? It was never something that we sat with our parents so much. We were asked to go read the book, or the parent would read the book. But here, there is this, teaching philosophy where you read them together.
Yeah.
Why is this important? Can you just share that a little bit for everyone?
Why is it important to have parents and children read together? Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Yeah, because parents are learning, right? I mean, when you're teaching kids about anything, parents are learning what children are doing and what they're interested in. It sparks those conversations. That's super important. Children have got notions, what they're learning from school, what they're learning from friends. This is an important time for parents to sit down and clarify, right? What maybe their belief system is and what
Mhm.
they think is important for their children to learn. These children are looking up to parents, right? They want to
Right.
know, they want to hear, and it's a beautiful time to bond with them.
Yes, that's the key right there, isn't it?
Of course. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Chevy, although the book is available at Amazon, and I've
Yes.
mentioned it a few times,
Yes.
that it's actually available at bookaboutdiwali.com
Yes.
at a cheaper price. And there's
Yes.
also some downloadable freebies. Can we
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? I want to encourage people to go there, even though they
Yeah.
can get it from anywhere else.
Yeah. Well, if you go to bookaboutdiwali.com, you will see that there are multiple options for you to get. So if you want to get a book for your entire classroom or as goodie bags for a Diwali party, maybe that you're having, right? You can get them for a much, much, much lower price. I want this to be as accessible and easy for you to get, right? And now that you have the book, you're like, what do I do with it? Right? I've read it with my kids. What else can I do? What I want you to do is bring it, share it, give it to your friends, give it to your neighbor, someone that has never celebrated before. And then there's a downloadable worksheet. One is just an FAQ. It talks about all things about what's inside the book, but what's important, the key takeaways. So when you go to your child's school, you can photocopy one for every single kid, give it to their parents. This is what your child learned in school today, right? So
Mhm.
now you are teaching your children's classmates, your children's classmates' teachers, and also their parents, right? So you need to be able to bring this into a wide area. Yes, you can go in and read a book about Diwali, a kid's book about Diwali to the students, but that's where it's going to stop. You want it to continue to grow, right? So I have worksheets, I have word searches, I have crossword puzzles, I have math worksheets from kindergarten to grade 6, pre-K, anything. I've got coloring things. Even if you're doing a big celebration, at your temple and you just want things, for kids to do. Of course, you have Rangoli and you have art. There's a lot of things that cause a lot of mess. Well, this doesn't cause a lot of mess, right? You want these kids to sit down, do some things, and really learn about the culture. Very easy. Go to bookaboutdiwali.com, download them for free. If there's something that you want that isn't there, contact me. I'll make it for you.
And how do people contact you, Chevy?
Yeah, you can go to Instagram at CHAVI send me an email, chubby at nonobviouscompany.com, or contact you and you'll contact me.
Absolutely. And of course, as a teacher, you would have thought about all of the other things that you could add to just make the experience of this book even more holistic and even more meaningful and even more impactful. Like I love everything about, what you've shared here, Chubby. And I want to ask you this question because, no journey of anything that hasn't been done before, because this is a first, comes without challenges. Did you face any challenges while creating your book? And if you did, were they ones that you overcame, or are you still, trying to figure it out?
Yeah, the book definitely came with its challenges. I think the one of the biggest one was figuring how to take this huge celebration with all these layers and variations and make it accessible for everyone, right? It's celebrated, like I said, across all different religions and different groups. So it was like a big balancing act to make sure I respected all of those traditions. The other thing that I was a little afraid of is, what if I'm biased? What if there are things that I'm
Mm,
saying that might offend someone? Right. And so what we did, and we do this across many of our books that we publish, we hired sensitivity readers. Now, sensitivity readers come in and they read it from a various different perspective, right?
mhm,
From different religions, different backgrounds, and they talk about, well, this could be misinterpreted. You may want to word this differently. So
mhm.
you have to ask other people instead of just relying on just your own personal knowledge, because you may accidentally, not intentionally, maybe you have some bias. You don't know, but you want to make sure that you are covering all of those areas. So that was one of those things. And honestly, my experience as a mom and a former teacher, it just played a huge part. I knew how to keep it simple and
Mhm.
engaging with language that could spark curiosity. And the goal for me was to make the book like warm and welcoming, and without making it feel like a history lesson. So yeah, it was challenging, but we overcome those challenges for sure.
Well, having read the book, having experienced just the visual spectacle that it is, it's you definitely accomplished everything. You can tell that this was written with a lot of intention, a lot of really thought process, because not only are you telling the main story, you have all of these kind of, footnotes and different things that are going on in there. Can you share that a little bit? Because what an interesting way to journey someone through the book.
Yeah, so there were footnotes because I couldn't include them in the story. The story flow would just be broken up. So when I share the story of the Ramayan, right, I wanted people to know that that is not the only way that Diwali is celebrated, right? That is,
Mhm.
Jain celebrated differently, Sikhs celebrated differently. And I put a footnote in there so that they were aware of that. And I wanted people to feel like they were included as well, that I didn't leave anything out. And
Mhm.
if they're interested in learning more, of course, they can, learn more about that. There's a little footnote in there also when we talk about lighting a diya. Make sure that you do it with a with an adult present, right?
I
All my
saw
friends
that.
that read that start laughing, right? But I'm like, yeah, it's true. Like, you
Yeah.
don't know. Kids are reading this on their own. They might want to light a diya to celebrate, but of course, you need to have an adult present and make sure it's safe. So yeah, it was important. But how do you encompass everything together? Put little footnotes so that there's
Mhm.
everything is being included and you don't leave anything out.
And then I feel it's really great because even the downloadables that you have, there's a vast amount of them, um, it's a great, communal thing to do with your parents as well. It's like they are learning if they're not from, our culture, they're
Yeah,
learning, the
yeah.
kids are learning, another opportunity to bond, which I love, love, love. We're getting close to closing off, and I kind of want to regroup and maybe ask you some questions on a larger scale.
Mm,
Um, you're a trained teacher. How
yeah.
do you feel about the current state of South Asian representation in the North American school system? And what changes would you like to see to better things for the way that our kids are being reared and how they are learning to identify themselves as well as, all of
Yeah.
their peers around them? Share that.
Yeah, thank you. Honestly, I think that South Asian representation in mainstream education is still pretty limited. We're seeing progress, though. There's definitely more awareness, and a lot of schools still don't have resources that reflect the diversity of their students. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book. There just weren't enough tools there to help teach kids about cultural celebrations. What I would love to see is more inclusive books,
Mhm.
inclusive lessons, inclusive activities. We have the Olympics that just happened. Why don't we share and about all different countries? Talk about that. Uh, Learn about different traditions and cultural traditions. It's important for kids to see themselves and their classmates represented in what they're learning. And when you do that, it builds empathy, it builds curiosity, it builds connection. Schools recognizing the Diwali holidays and other holidays, it's a great step, but there's a lot more we can do to be truly inclusive and embrace diversity in education.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. You said something that really sat with me there, and I want to just point it out. This is not just about you being identified, as who you are and what you identify as, but it is also understanding, acknowledging, accommodating all the others, everyone else that is in your classroom, in your communities, in the places that you play, in the places that you go and worship. So I think that that is a really important thing that just sat out right there for me when you said what you did.
Mm.
It's important that you sit with who you need to be, but also understand who others need to be, right? And of course that comes from you as a teacher, because you've probably seen this a lot, right? Like, we want to instill our culture and have it be represented in the correct manner, but we also want to do the same with others too. And
Yeah.
we all, right?
Yeah, you
That's
have
the
to be
big thing here.
open-minded.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have to be open-minded, right? You have to understand. The only way you can understand yourself is by understanding others,
Yes.
right? The way you connect with other people is by asking those questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? Once you start asking, and instead of just sharing and me, ask questions, be curious, be inquisitive, right? And then think, like, for example, my brother in law, he's Hindu and his wife is Jewish. And they had a wedding ceremony and they wanted to incorporate both cultures together. And what they did some research, they asked questions, they read, and they said, "Oh, do you know that Mandi is also celebrated? Right? Mandi is something that they do in the Jewish religion, and they
Mm-hmm.
decided to do Mandi. They decided to do things and combine things. They had a muppa, right? A
Mm-hmm.
muppa is a mandap and a huppa, right, together.
I love it.
And so, why not take everyone else's cultures, combine them together? Why not everyone celebrate Diwali? We celebrate Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I want, that is my main mission. I want everyone, no matter what your background is, I want you to celebrate Diwali. Join us. Join us, come to our activities, come to our temples. We will never, ever turn you away,
Mm-hmm.
right? I want everyone to celebrate with us because Diwali is for everyone.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Diwali is for everyone. Javi, as we get ready to close out, I have to ask you this. As a mother,
Yeah.
what advice do you have for parents who want to instill pride of their cultural roots in their children's upbringing and foster inclusivity in the communities that we live, work, and
Yeah.
play in? Because there's a balancing act there, or is there?
Yeah. Well, I have three things I would say. Start with stories, right? Stories are a natural way for children to understand the world around them and see themselves in the narratives, whether it's through books, family traditions, community events. Expose your kids to different cultures, right? Encouraging pride in your own culture as well. At the same time, teach every child to be curious, right? To be open minded and teach them about other cultures that enriches our understanding of the world, right?
Mhm.
Invite people in, invite them to your homes, invite them to your celebrations. The other thing that I would love for all parents to do is seek South Asian educational products. There are so many wonderful entrepreneurs out there. There's Modi Toys, Cultural Khazana, Culture Trees. There's so many South Asian authors. Seek them, listen
Mhm.
to them, buy their products, use them in your classrooms and in your homes. Right? That is the best way to be more inclusive and also teach your children about things that are not just about your own traditions and your cultures.
Absolutely. And, is there anything that I haven't, spoken to you about? Is there anything at all that you'd like to share as we close off, Javi? Perhaps, any words of wisdom or experience that you'd like to leave people with?
Hmm. Well,
Mm,
for me, I just want you to know that to me, the success of this book isn't about how many copies are sold, right? Of course, it's great to reach more people. It's really about impact. And it's about the moment when that child picks up the book, sees themselves in the story, and feels proud of who they are. And what means so much to me as a mom, as a teacher. I want these children to be curious, start understanding, ask questions. That's what's important to me. And I want them to have those like light bulb moments, right? When they learn a culture different and outside of their own and feels connected.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well said. Javi, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your incredible journey with a kid's book about Diwali. And you know, I mean this when I say this. I genuinely wish you much success with your mission to spread cultural awareness and acceptance. I really, really do, sweetheart. And I want you to come back on when, you know, you have something else to share.
Yeah.
I really, you know, I love this wider mission that you're on. I love the, you know, expression of inclusivity that, you know, you've shared here. Your definition of it is beautifully said. And coming as a mother, as a woman, as a wife, as an educator, it really, you know, it really hits home for me. So thank you so much for coming on, sweetheart. Come on again.
Oh, I would love to. Invite me. Invite me. I would love to. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Um, you have been an inspiration to me for such a long time. I've watched you for how many years? You've interviewed my husband, you've interviewed every one of my friends, and I never thought that actually I'd have a chance to have this. So I thank you with from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for sharing my book, and thank you for amplifying South Asians across the world.
Oh my gosh, darling. Ditto back to you. And I mean that.
Thank
Until
you.
next time. And guys, I will see you next time on Anoki Uncensored. And please stay connected with us. There's the book right there. And actually, before we go, can you just open to show people what it actually looks like inside? Because
Yeah.
it's so incredible. Because you're yeah, there you go.
So
Look at that, guys,
here it tells you how to pronounce my name. Isn't
which
it
I
awful
love.
when people mispronounce your name? So this is important to me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I say, have you celebrated Diwali before?
Not
Can you see that?
assuming that they have. Oh my gosh, look at this, guys. It's like Christmas, New Year's, and Independence Day all together. What a
Yeah,
great preface to telling the story.
yeah. Oops. Can you see that?
Yeah. Let's bring it down a bit,
Oh,
Javi.
yeah, yeah, right
Yeah,
there.
there it is. Look at that. Now, if that hasn't gotten you excited to go grab your copy of this book and, you know, share it with your kids, then I don't know what will. And if you're a teacher out
And
there,
then
if you're an
here's,
educator out there, if you're a leader in your community, go get this book. Talk about this book in your communities because it's important that we all feel the belonging that Javi has been talking about. That has been the main theme of this conversation. Thank you again, Javi. And we'll have you back because we have to. I feel like there's so many other things you touched upon, which we haven't been able to really deep dive, which we're going to. But for now, this is me over and out. Guys, please stay in connection with us everywhere we exist on social media at Anoki Lifestyle. Go to the website at anokilife.com. Download the free weekly newsletter. If you're one of those people that just doesn't have time to, you know, go in all the time, we send that out to your inbox so you don't miss anything because FOMO is real, especially in this community that is doing a ton of incredible things across all verticals. And I can't wait to see you next time to talk more about the incredible journey and story that is the South Asian community, regionally, nationally, and internationally. I'm Girn, and I'll see you next time. Have the best rest of your week.